Good morning to everyone. It's fantastic that we are live from UK. I'm Tony Bryant from K3 Business Technologies, and we got a quarter of an hour just to talk through the positioning of commerce and around the headless nature of commerce going forward regarding the futures of technology. Before I get into that particular segment of the presentation, just thought it's just worthwhile just giving you a bit of a backdrop of some of the things which we're sort of seeing in the fashion world, in the fashion industry, around consumer behaviour. And one of the big ones is the move in terms of instant gratification, a lot more around social media, in terms of that connection across the channel, and also obviously the subset of branding, and obviously consumers aligned to the branding messaging from the fashion and retailers across the market. The big one for me is around sustainability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation moves through. But I thought it just worthwhile. What we're seeing is a shift in a number of the fashion business models. And please, I'm not going to go through in this level of detail in all of these, but if you start looking at sort of the change, the content to commerce, C2C as we call it, in terms of those models. So in other words, instant regarding getting product out to that market across the commerce platforms. The curator models, we're bringing together products from different brands together in terms of communities in which we play. And that's quite clearly in terms of some of the marketplaces who are emerging across the globe, and ones who we work with. There's the online to offline models, and that's more around some of that headless commerce I'm talking about regarding how that synergy works, the aggregated models. And then when you start looking at rental emerging, and ethical and sustainability models in terms of supply chain and some of the things across ethical trade, from where we know from manufacturer all the way through to consumer. And then a lot more around what we're seeing regarding reuse, recycle, and second-hand modeling. And that's becoming more and more important in terms of the life of the product. That certainly starts to fit around the sustainability models as well. But that gives a bit of a backdrop of some of the change. And some of that change, particularly in the last year, affected by the pandemic, means that we need agile IT and solutions to sort of fit some of these changing business models. So the future of commerce is headless. So what do we really mean about that? Well, yeah, the world of commerce is changing. And what is the term in terms of, the factor around commerce? And I think, has it really lost its head? And I know that's a bit of fun around what it really means. But, the agility to meet the new customer demands has fundamentally changed over the last 12 months. And all of us in this virtual world today, in this particular virtual conference, we can see what those changes are. And it's been a mammoth task to support those different customer journeys. Amazon and many others continues to raise the bar when they start to think around convenience, and the expectations at all time are pretty high. And they're a demanding lot, our end customers and consumers who we engage with on a daily basis. I think the getting ready for the now is the important bit. And look, come on, there's research, and I think we research on research in many cases, but there's a hell of a lot of data and a lot of researches, and particularly even now, when you start looking at everybody trying to do the prediction of what the future would look like. And there's some great things. And of course, naturally, as a major part and major player within the fashion and retail space, we've started to do our own. And we've done quite a lot of those new findings around, end customers thinking. And, a third would stop using a retailer for not offering the services which they really want to see moving into 2021 and beyond. We've got to try and meet those customers where they are today in terms of some of those demands. We've got to get retailers ready for now. And that's a sort of change in mindset of how we're going to operate for the future. And technology, where does that sit? That some of the legacy stuff out there, and the legacy stuff which even K3 have been using for many, many years, we have to rethink. and we have to be much more agile to where we want to be for the future. What's quite interesting is that, convenience now seems to be king. Our world is a click of one button, or many buttons in some cases. And a shift to everything on the doorstep in terms of our delivery processes and meeting the demands of the customer who's more at home than in the office, or certainly than in the high street. And I think that change is where that convenience part starts to hit. I had some of the big frustrations, and some of those frustrations are with me as a consumer, as well as where we are with our own retail offerings. Long queues, it's still a major part of people's hassle if they do get the opportunity to go back into those retail storefronts. The trouble placing online orders. I mean, we shouldn't be in that world today, but we are. And 24% of those say that is a big, big frustration. And when you start to think, may not be a frustration, but it is a frustration for others to meet the need. When you start looking, okay, I'll say the big A again in terms of Amazon, where they've been far more active, in fact, 50% plus uptake regarding the pandemic of using the Amazon marketplace. And it just proves a point where we start to think around what that shift and what that change would be. Free delivery is a number one top, and we start looking at returns, and particularly associated to fashion. And we know fashion industry has an issue, whether it be niche, luxury, or fast, regarding those returns and how we get those products back in from the consumer and back into stock. And some of that is around Amazon and ASOS of the world. We're starting to get that sort of spot on, and we start to see other marketplaces doing very, very similar in terms of that activity. So convenience is a major part. And I suppose from a technology perspective, it's how you meet that agility of how the shift in terms of the consumer attitudes and responses are. And again, it's about researching, it's about data, and I apologize for doing a bit of a data overload here, but it is worthwhile, because as a technology company, we've got to seriously think in terms of our direction and our move to where we want to be for the future. And also meeting not only the brands, but also the end customer new journey. So human contact, is that going to be a thing of the past? Well, we start to learn a hell of a lot regarding COVID, and a hell of a lot regarding the customer journey. And over half the consumers really would not like to have that interaction with staff when visiting a store. Now, that's a major shift. Now, that data is a sample data. Is it factual in terms of every shopper going into a store? Well, of course it's not. But we need some technology and the way of working differently to where we are, before the pandemic. And the pandemic has made that, more of an issue regarding, do I really want to talk to someone? Do I really want that interaction? Because the interaction was a major part of what we were doing before. Clienteling and all of the buzzwords within the industry was around that. And it's an interesting debate, because I always make the quote, when you interview a consumer going out of a store, or engaging online, and you talk about what was your omni-channel experience, they'll look at you going, what the hell is omni-channel? And as an industry, we know it, and those people who are not only traders but also manufacturers and understand where the omni-channel presence would be. But the end customer sometimes queries, what is that connection? And we've got to start to think around what that human contact will be going forward. So 2 to 5 people would like to see self-service a lot more introduced to more retailers, and the customers need to feel valued and listened to about less contact and more service. And that's a sort of a shift which we've got to think about, consider, but also have the agility to shift if it moves away from not just connecting, but also back into connection. And we've got to think how we are more agile in terms of our presence. So retailers need to introduce new service levels to survive. Hard statement, that one. But I think when we start to look at, more product repairs as an example, some of that sustainability things I'm sort of mentioned in terms of the models, retailers are now starting to think around, well, actually the life of that product, how much more can I do? My wax jacket from Barbour, can I actually have that repaired and fixed and re-waxed? And does it have another life? Well, the answer is, of course it does. And we start to think about the whole life cycle of a product now in a much more meaningful way. The upcycling in terms of initiatives, 2 out of 5 folk want to know more around those upcycling initiatives, which we do. They want to see reselling of secondhand goods. And they want to see a better way of doing business with a brand. Is it about renting? Is it about leasing products? Is it the fact that, I just don't want to buy it on a Friday, wear it on a Friday and return it? I may want to actually rent it and have it a little bit longer, but the rented model is going to be very different in terms of my consumption. And the new buyer, well, we know significantly they can boycott a retailer due to the lack of awareness of the environment. We see that as a major shift going forward, and we need technology to support the ever-increasing supply chain management of a business, and how we look at how we have that visibility across the supply chain to start to think about what the sustainability and the environmental impact is. People are on the case. They know where the products go and the product's journey. And what we've got to be sure on that we can actually show, the true sense of the supply chain and where that product's been and gone before it actually gets to in the arms of the consumer. Retail sort of risk around, under the half the customer base in terms of pricing, and pricing is obviously clearly a major part, and we're all here to help and support retailers and brands and fashion houses, to make money, to make better margin by looking at streamlined processes and streamlined operations, because that affects price. And the good thing about it, if we're overpriced and we can't do it. And then we then screw various parts of the supply chain to get that price under control. And there's another part of that whole thing about the new buyer. There's a greater understanding of that. And more importantly, comparison in terms of when they start looking at the trade, which they could do from one brand to another. And also caring about the environment in the coming years. It's an important step. And then, again, we've probably heard many examples of that through the conference over the last couple of days. And I think, when we start to think what is going to happen in the coming years, it's a really important part. If you think around then the tide of change in terms of technology, well, omnichannel is a given. Digital adoption is absolutely right in terms of to be accelerated. And sustainable action is a must because we have to meet that new demand. Reassessing business models is a constant, just those things I teased you with earlier. And there's a better and agile supply chain which need to be enforced in part of collaboration and better collaboration with our partners and manufacturers across the globe. In the store of the future, well, who knows? We've been talking about the store of the future many times over, and I've been to NRF, the major retail show in New York over the last 15 years, and we've been talking about the store of the future every single year. Technology is going to underpin a lot of these threads in terms of the new possible. And for me, it's around sustainability, the things about thinking about less human contact, and the agility around our products and how we manage the supply chain is absolutely vital. Now, here's the thing. The big thing for me is, does your back end really talk to the front end? And that's really about headless commerce. Now, we haven't really touched in terms of the subject, because hopefully you'll be able to talk about that post this little presentation I'm doing. But the consumer is getting used to consuming content and making purchases through various channels and new touch points. The IoT devices and web apps are absolutely critical in terms of how we connect to those customer journeys. Legacy commerce platforms will be struggling to keep up with those new demands. And those new demands, we've learned a hell of a lot, as the data says, throughout the COVID period. And whatever's next in terms of our future. So hopefully, let's keep the conversation going. We'd love to talk more to you about it. But what I thought I'd do is just a quick thing about K3. So we work with the most incredible businesses in the market. We really start to deliver some commerce and operational solutions that make day-to-day work better today, not just about the future. And we're challenging and making sure that we face the global businesses in today's ever-changing world. We're not perfect, that we are a perfect partner to start to deliver lifetime value to support today, but also more importantly, architect tomorrow. We have a great team in terms of innovators, and that helps us as a total digitally transform, not only our customers, but also our partners, our end customers in terms of the realtor end customers, the ones who put the money in the till. So hopefully that's been of use. It's great for the session. I'm Tony Bryant, over and out, and have a great rest of the day. And thank you very much, Digital Fashion Week.